The adults are back in the room. The adults are back in the room. Now, Keir Starmer has removed the whip from 7 Labour MPs who voted with their principles and refused to keep 500,000 children in poverty because Starmer and the Labour right are a bunch of petulant, factional authoritarians. They have kicked out 7 backbenchers who are no longer Labour MPs. Now, the 7 Labour MPs who have a backbone are Absama Begum, Imran Hussain, Rebecca Long Bailey, Ian Byrne, Richard Burgon, Zara Sultana, and John McDonnell. Now, there were some on the left of the Labour Party and members of the Socialist Campaign Group who voted against the amendment. Any respect I had for these so-called left-wing Labour MPs who voted to keep the cap, such as Clive Lewis and Dawn Butler, are gone. Now, this is a litmus test for me. Child poverty is one of the most depressing and avoidable things we have in a rich nation, and it's something I feel strongly about. I also want to talk about Absama Begum. She was in an abusive relationship where her ex-partner was, shall I say, a well-connected Labour member. He tried to get rid of her. She was actually the victim of a deselection campaign pushed by her abuser, in which Starmer did nothing to protect her. He has now removed the whip from her. So he has literally done the job of her abuser for him. It's absolutely disgusting, shameful, and gutter behaviour. What we saw yesterday was Keir Starmer putting party before country, despite being one of the main themes of his election campaign was to put the country first. They didn't want to vote for an SNP motion, and they kicked out Labour dissenters, which is literally putting the party first. But it wasn't just the Labour Party that has shown itself to be utterly disgusting, but the defenders, whether they be activists or pundits in the media. Now, Twitter was an utter bin fire yesterday, some real gutter politics, and just as I predicted yesterday, there's no floor for these people. They will defend Starmer until the very end. This is Joshua Garfield, Labour councillor and NEC member, celebrating putting country before party. Then he's got a pretty disgusting image of Labour supporters celebrating putting their faction over the country. I mean, who takes a celebratory picture after the government just voted to keep 500,000 kids in poverty? Now, Ian Dunt, he says this: terribly stupid, a pointless theatrical display of look at me conscience from the rebels, and an excessive control freak response from the leadership. Now, we can always rely on Ian Dunt to come out with the most comically stupid takes. And look, it's not a pointless theatrical display of, oh, look at me from these people. These people actually care about children and poverty. Now, the Sun's Harry Cole with, surprisingly, a sensible take. Only joking, he works for the Sun, of course it isn't. How long before this stupid 7 unites with the Fruity 5 and Magic Grandpa? That's Harry Cole thinking you're stupid if you want 500,000 kids out of poverty. He works for a paper that smeared dead football fans in Hillsborough. Harry Cole is a piece of shit. Nick Tyrone, he wrote a book once and has since become a Starmer sycophant. He said this: what the left haven't figured out yet is that the Tories are now so incredibly weak, the leadership of the Labour Party has no need to fear the left and can be as ruthless towards them as they like. I mean, haven't figured it out. We've been saying that the Labour right are petulant children who exist to attack and destroy the left more than anything else for decades. I mean, we've been saying this before Jeremy Corbyn became leader. We've been saying this the entire time. It's not anything new here. And it's also funny that for so long we were told that you cannot criticise Labour or Starmer because we need to get the Tories out. Okay, well, the Tories are now out. And funny how these same people just switch it up. I mean, instead of saying the Tories are so far behind, they aren't really a threat, maybe Labour could just be a bit more radical. Instead, they're like, aha, there's no threat of the Tories, so kick out all the dissenters. Now, we knew they were going to change their position. We knew the whole Tory threat was just an excuse to make sure that vaguely left-wing policies weren't discussed. They were never scared of the Tories winning. They were scared that the left may have had some power. Now, the last Blairite, literally one of the worst accounts on the app, reliably saying something moronic. If you were elected as a Labour MP, then you should be voting for the Labour manifesto that won the election. If they didn't want to, they shouldn't have stood as Labour MPs. I accept there will be diversions over time, but the first King's speech? Unacceptable and disingenuous. That's the last Blairite not accepting diversions. Look, to those saying MPs who were elected on the Labour manifesto to keep the cap, I look forward to those same people attacking Starmer if he removes it after the budget, because he will be reneging on the manifesto. And he wasn't elected on that platform. Somehow, I don't think that's going to be the case. Now, the cheering of stamping out plurality and diverse voices is grotesque. And look, there would be more of an argument if Labour had a super thin majority or if it was a hung parliament. They have 411 MPs, of which only 7 rebelled. They didn't need to do anything. The government was completely successful in what they set out to do. They didn't need to go after these rebels. They did it because they're bastards. And this is exactly the reason why those of us on the left said to not vote Labour. We said vote Green or Independent because a Labour majority was guaranteed. Now, we literally said a huge Labour majority would be a bad thing. If it was a slim majority or even a hung parliament, that would have been better. The leadership wouldn't have acted so callously. I mean, they would have relied on every single Labour MP. So if they didn't have such a big majority, the last thing they want to do is piss off anyone in the PLP. They may have even capitulated on the cap, or at least wouldn't have suspended these people. But they can do what they like now because they are untouchable. Literally everything us leftists predicted before the election has been proved 100% correct. Now, the idea that because it was in the manifesto means every single Labour MP has to vote for it, well, it's plain stupid. Not every MP gets a say on the manifesto, and actually this time around it would have been a very small number of people. Now, the shadow cabinet, I mean, they make the media appearances. They're the ones that tried to sell the manifesto policies, so it makes sense that when in power, they have to back it. I mean, why wouldn't they after literally telling the country why these policies are good ideas? But backbench MPs aren't in government. They aren't in the cabinet. Their priority is to represent the constituents. Just imagine for a second, just think about this. If you're a backbench MP and the area you represent is extremely poor with a high amount of child poverty and the local residents are asking you about the cap or are concerned about it, what if a family comes in and they say, I've got 4 children, right? My husband's ill. I've just lost my job. I've never been out of work, but now I'm struggling. Should these MPs tell them to fuck off and say, nope, I'm voting with the leader because I'm a grown-up, which is what the party made them do, which is by definition putting party before country. Now, there's an old Matt Zarb cousin tweet being shared by the centrists thinking it's a gotcha. Good leadership from Corbyn sacking frontbenchers who broke the whip. If they can't respect manifesto then increase their majority, they can go. And a lot of them are like, hypocrisy much. But these were shadow cabinet members who had collective responsibility and they were sacked from the cabinet. They still had the whip. Therefore, they were still Labour MPs. What Starmer has done is to act like a vindictive shit and remove the whip from 7 backbenchers. It didn't need to be done. And it's funny watching all these sensible pundits who cried at Boris Johnson removing the whip from his MPs who didn't vote his way, yet are here cheering on 7 Labour MPs being suspended by voting to lift children out of poverty. These self-described centrists are extremists in a cult. Imagine if Corbyn acted in this way. I mean, you wouldn't hear the end of it. Corbyn engages in Stalinist purge. You'd have the BBC making another Corbyn Russia mock-up image. But instead, the narrative is, well, Starmer shows strong leadership, and legit, that has been some of the headlines. Now, some Labour MPs, who say they are principally against the cap, voted for it and tried to justify their vote. Torsten Bell, one of the new Labour MPs, he voted to keep the cap. Well, this is him here.
The two-child limit is a really big deal. It has increased poverty. It's a terrible policy. It's done exactly what we knew it would do, and it's done it in a terrible way, and it's rolling out for years. I think all parts of the Labour Party think this is a terrible policy, and all parts of the Labour Party will want to see it abolished at some point. It's a terrible policy. It's a terrible policy.
So being a grown-up in politics isn't to vote for the way you believe in. It's to say, I have a policy position. Then when another party, say, I don't know, the SNP, brings about an amendment which does exactly the thing you want to do, you vote against it and then hopefully wait until the government changes its mind at the first budget and then vote it through with Labour's name on it and not any other party. So party before country. Now, if only there was a party leader who wanted to scrap the cap. We must scrap the inhumane work capability assessments and private provision of disability assessments, e.g. ATOS, scrap punitive sanctions, 2-child limit and benefits cap. Yes, that was Keir Starmer calling to scrap the 2-child benefit cap in 2020. 5D chess grown-up adults in the room is to lie about your policy positions. got it. Now, shame on every single MP in Parliament who are on at least 80k a year plus expenses, who have just voted to keep 500,000 children in poverty. It's disgusting and deplorable. But the main reason why we have this kind of politics is our media. It's our failing upwards, privately educated journalists who dominate the media landscape. Instead of having integrity or even consistency, they seem to change their views based on politicians they like. As I mentioned earlier, for the sensible punditry, Boris Johnson was a disgrace for removing the whip from Tory MPs who didn't vote the way he wanted them to. Scandalous, authoritarian. But when it's Keir Starmer and keeping kids in poverty, bravo, bravo, strong leadership, grown-up politics. And it's precisely because 90% of our journalists, who are privately educated, middle class to well off, they all know each other. They haven't struggled. They haven't been in poverty. This kind of stuff, it doesn't bother them. So at the end of the day, Starmer, Reeves, whoever will always act in the interests of the well off because our media is entirely broken. We won't see the working class truly represented whilst we have the worst media in the Western world, and we got to change it. I'm excited to say that Turn Left has significantly grown this year, and with that, we've managed to produce far more ambitious content, interviewing high-profile people. We did a 12-hour live election show. There are multiple people behind Turn Left, but we are still working around our full-time work. But we would love it if this was our full-time. It means we could dedicate so much more and to bring even more ambitious content. So if you've been here from the beginning, or you've only recently become a viewer, if you like what we do, then you can help us out. Please like and share this video. Make sure you drop a comment. We want to hear your thoughts. We want to hear your feedback. And we desperately need more independent media. If you want to see a socialist media alternative thrive, then you could be part of that. So if you can, you could support us on Patreon for £3 or £5 per month, or any one-off donation. We can use that money to upgrade our equipment, to rent out a proper studio, and to start paying ourselves. This is only the beginning. Thank you for watching, and we'll see you next time.
Patreon.com, Turn Left Media. Support independent media. Support social justice that's there on social media. Thank you, Turn Left.